Christmas 1990. A freckle-faced kid booby trapped America's heart. Home Alone didn't just mint a new holiday classic, it minted a phenomenon, Macaulay Culkin. The 9-year-old who powered a film to nearly $500 million worldwide and, for a brief, blinding moment, became the most famous child on Earth. By 12, he was headlining Home Alone 2, My Girl, The Good Son, Richie Rich, a pint-sized marquee whose paycheck rivaled adult A-listers. Then the fairy tale twisted, a bitter financial battle with his parents over control of his earnings. A self-imposed exile from Hollywood at 14. And, years later, a gaunt tabloid specter in oversized hoodies, culminating in a 2004 arrest for drug possession, turned the golden boy into a national worry. The camera that once adored him now hunted him. What happened between the scream on that poster and the silence that followed? Was it the machinery of child stardom grinding down a sensitive kid? A family implosion? Or the kind of fame no adolescent nervous system can metabolize? This is the story of a boy genius who out-earned his childhood, vanished at the height of his powers, and spent the next decades trying to become a person again, off-script, off-set, and on his own terms. Macaulay Culkin was born on August 26, 1980, in New York City, the third of 7 children in a crowded one-bedroom apartment. His father, Kit Culkin, was a former stage actor with unfulfilled ambitions, while his mother, Patricia Brentrup, worked to keep the family afloat. The Culkin household was noisy, chaotic, and financially strained, but it was also steeped in performance. Kit, who had once brushed against the theater world, began pushing his children into acting as a means of both survival and redemption. From an early age, Macaulay stood out, bright-eyed, small for his age, and naturally expressive. He seemed born to charm a camera. By 4, he was appearing in stage productions with his siblings, often in off-Broadway plays. His earliest roles were modest, commercials, television bit parts, but his innate charisma made casting directors take notice. The Culkin family dynamic was complicated. While Patricia tried to provide stability, Kit was domineering and increasingly obsessed with molding Macaulay into the star he never became himself. The pressure on the young boy was immense. Acting was not just a passion. It was the family's economic lifeline. As one of 7 siblings, Macaulay's success would soon lift everyone out of poverty, but at the cost of his childhood. Despite the demands, Macaulay had flashes of a normal upbringing. He attended a Catholic school in Yorkville, Manhattan, where classmates remembered him as shy but friendly. Still, his absences for auditions and shoots set him apart. By the time he was 9, he was working more consistently than most adults. The Culkin family's story was one of both opportunity and exploitation. Kit's relentless drive brought Macaulay into the spotlight, but it also created fractures that would deepen with fame. The seeds of future conflict, over money, control, and identity, were planted in those cramped New York years, even as the boy at the center of it all seemed blissfully unaware that his life was about to change forever with one holiday movie. Macaulay Culkin's early education was always at war with his acting career. Enrolled in a Catholic school in Manhattan, he struggled to balance homework with auditions, rehearsals, and shoots. Teachers described him as bright but often absent, a boy whose second classroom was the casting office. By the age of 8, his path was already veering far from that of his classmates. His first screen appearances came in commercials and small TV roles. In 1988, he landed a part in Rocket Gibraltar, followed by a more prominent role opposite John Candy in John Hughes's Uncle Buck, 1989. The film proved pivotal. Hughes, captivated by Macaulay's timing and natural charm, soon wrote another script with him in mind. That script would change the course of child stardom forever. Home Alone, 1990. When Home Alone hit theaters, it became a global sensation. The image of Kevin McAllister, hands on cheeks, screaming, was everywhere. Posters, T-shirts, parodies. Macaulay's mischievous wit and vulnerability carried the film, turning a modestly budgeted comedy into a $500 million box office juggernaut. Practically overnight, He became not just a child actor but a phenomenon. With fame came more roles. My Girl, 1991, which showed his dramatic side. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, 1992, which cemented his superstar status. The Good Son, 1993, a chilling turn as a manipulative child, and Richie Rich, 1994, where he played the world's richest boy. By the time he was 12, he was reportedly earning $8 million per film, making him one of the highest-paid actors of the early 1990s, child or adult. Yet this whirlwind ascent meant his education was often neglected. Tutors were brought to sets, but there was little stability. The intensity of constant work also robbed him of a traditional childhood. While other kids played in parks, Macaulay was memorizing scripts, navigating press junkets, and watching his face appear in every toy store and fast food chain tie-in. His early career was meteoric, dazzling, and unsustainable. The very success that made him a household name also isolated him, thrusting him into an adult world long before he was ready. The seeds of both triumph and tragedy were sown in these years of precocious brilliance. By the early 1990s, Macaulay Culkin was more than just a child star. He was the face of a cultural moment. Home Alone, 1990, had catapulted him into an orbit few child actors had ever reached. And Hollywood was determined to capitalize on the phenomenon. At just 10 years old, he was headlining films that routinely topped the box office. My Girl, 1991, revealed a tender side of his acting, with his heartbreaking death scene leaving audiences in tears and proving he could do more than slapstick. Then came Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, 1992, which grossed nearly $360 million worldwide and cemented Kevin McAllister as an icon of American pop culture. With each project, Macaulay's status grew, and so did his paycheck. By the time of Richie Rich, 1994, he was commanding $8 million per film, making him one of the highest-paid actors. Period. Hollywood had not seen anything like it. A child who could carry multi-million-dollar productions on his small shoulders. With studios betting entire holiday seasons on his charisma, his cherubic face, comedic timing, and relatability made him a generational figure. For millions of children, Macaulay wasn't just an actor, they felt he was their friend. Behind the scenes, however, the pressure was enormous. The media frenzy around him was relentless. Paparazzi camped outside his home. Tabloids dissected his every move, and interviews often veered into uncomfortable territory, treating him less like a child and more like a commodity. His father, Kit Culkin, acted as his manager and was infamous for being domineering on set, often clashing with directors and producers. Many in Hollywood privately admitted they hired Macaulay for his talent but dreaded dealing with Kit's demands. By 1993, the Culkin family dynamic had begun to fray. While Macaulay's success brought immense wealth, it also sparked battles over money and control. His parents never married, and as their relationship deteriorated, custody disputes spilled into public view. Caught in the middle, Macaulay began to resent not just the industry but the way his family life had been consumed by it. Despite the turmoil, his films of this period left an indelible mark. The Good Son, 1993, shocked audiences with his chilling portrayal of a manipulative child, a deliberate attempt to break from the wholesome Kevin McAllister image. Though critics were divided, the performance demonstrated his range. Yet after Richie Rich in 1994 underperformed, Hollywood began to wonder if the golden streak could last. By the age of 14, Macaulay had starred in more than a dozen films, earned tens of millions, and become a household name worldwide. But he was also exhausted, embattled at home, and increasingly disillusioned with Hollywood. What seemed like the peak of his success was, in truth, the beginning of his retreat. The dazzling breakthrough of Macaulay Culkin was a story of extremes, unimaginable wealth and fame for a child barely out of grade school, countered by family strife and the suffocating weight of expectations. For the boy who once embodied the joy of Christmas, the spotlight had become a burden he could no longer bear. As Macaulay Culkin stepped away from Hollywood in the mid-1990s, His personal life became as much a fascination as his films once had been. For someone who had lived under the constant gaze of cameras since childhood, relationships offered both refuge and renewed scrutiny. In 1998, at just 17 years old, Culkin shocked fans by marrying actress Rachel Miner, also a teenager and rising talent in Hollywood. Their union was youthful and idealistic, two former child actors trying to create stability in a world that had chewed them up too quickly. But by 2000, the pressures of young marriage, combined with Culkin's retreat from acting and desire for anonymity, strained the relationship. The couple separated in 2000 and finalized their divorce in 2002. Following his split from Miner, Culkin entered a long-term relationship with Mila Kunis, then gaining fame on That 70s Show. Their romance, which lasted nearly a decade, 2002 to 2010, was unusually private given their celebrity status. Kunis often described their bond as normal and low-key, a stark contrast to Hollywood's high-profile romances. Yet paparazzi intrusion was constant, and Mila later admitted the relationship was heavily scrutinized simply because of Culkin's fame as the Home Alone kid. Despite the public curiosity, their breakup was amicable, with both parties later speaking respectfully of each other. In the years after, Culkin remained linked to various names in the tabloids, but his most significant romance began quietly in 2017 with actress Brenda Song. Known for Disney Channel's The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, the pairing surprised some, two former child stars from different eras finding each other in adulthood, but the relationship blossomed. By 2021, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named Dakota, in honor of Macaulay's late sister. For fans, the news was both heartwarming and symbolic. The once troubled child actor had found family and stability on his own terms. Culkin's love life highlights the strange paradox of his existence. While he yearned for privacy, his relationships, especially with Kunis and later Song, were relentlessly pursued by paparazzi and tabloids eager to recast him in the spotlight he had long abandoned. Unlike many child stars whose personal lives spiraled into chaos, Macaulay's relationships often showed his attempt to build something ordinary and grounded in the midst of extraordinary fame. In the narrative of his life, romance was less about scandal than survival. His marriage to Rachel Miner reflected youthful rebellion. His long partnership with Mila Kunis offered companionship during years of retreat. And his relationship with Brenda Song symbolizes renewal and stability. Through love, Macaulay Culkin found fragments of the normal life that fame had denied him. By the early 2000s, Macaulay Culkin had already stepped back from Hollywood, but retreat did not shield him from turmoil. Away from the cameras, the former child superstar wrestled with identity, addiction, and a growing fascination from tabloids eager to chronicle his collapse. In 2004, Culkin was arrested in Oklahoma City for possession of marijuana and 2 controlled substances without prescriptions. Mugshots of the once adorable Kevin McAllister circulated globally, feeding headlines that branded him another fallen child star. He eventually pled guilty to misdemeanor charges and received a suspended sentence. But the damage to his image was profound. The boy who had symbolized innocence and holiday joy was now depicted as a cautionary tale. Tabloids thrived on his apparent downfall. Paparazzi photographs of Culkin looking gaunt, pale, and disoriented appeared in magazines and online, often accompanied by sensationalist captions suggesting hard drug use or terminal decline. Though Culkin later denied being as deeply addicted as the press claimed. He admitted to struggling with substances and depression, the twin specters haunting many child actors. Part of the chaos stemmed from his family. Culkin had been estranged from his father, Kit Culkin, after a bitter legal battle in the mid-1990s in which Macaulay sought to remove his parents' names from his trust fund. He won, effectively controlling his own fortune, but the scars of a childhood managed like a business venture lingered. With millions in the bank but little direction, Culkin drifted through his 20s. Hollywood, once desperate for his presence, seemed to move on. His acting appearances were sparse. A cameo in Will and Grace, 2003. The dark indie party monster, 2003, and the satirical Saved, 2004. While these roles earned critical curiosity, they failed to revive his mainstream career. Casting directors struggled to see beyond Kevin McAllister, and audiences were often more interested in the spectacle of Culkin's personal troubles than his performances. Public fascination with his struggles mirrored broader trends. The 2000s were the height of tabloid culture, with figures like Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and Paris Hilton treated as entertainment commodities. Culkin fit neatly into the narrative of the child star gone wrong, and outlets exploited his every stumble to sell copies and clicks. Yet Culkin's downfall was more nuanced than the headlines suggested. He was not constantly in and out of rehab like some of his peers. Nor did he spiral into violent behavior. Instead, his collapse was quieter, a mix of drug use, emotional withdrawal, and a retreat from an industry that had both made and broken him. For fans, though, the images of a fragile, haunted-looking Culkin were enough to cement the perception of tragedy. The label of washed-up child star followed him for years. Invitations to return to major studio films never came, and the boy once paid more than most adults in Hollywood became an almost mythic cautionary tale. By the late 2000s, Macaulay Culkin had all but vanished from the mainstream, remembered less for his talent and more for his struggles. This era of scandal and decline underscored the brutal life cycle of child stardom, meteoric rise, relentless exploitation, and inevitable burnout. Culkin's case was especially tragic because of how beloved he had once been. Watching him unravel wasn't just another tabloid story. It was a collective reckoning with how Hollywood treats its youngest treasures. For nearly a decade, Macaulay Culkin lived in the shadows of his own fame, too famous to live privately, too typecast to revive his career, and too vulnerable to escape the narratives imposed upon him. His downfall was not a dramatic implosion but a slow fade, one that left fans wondering whether the boy from Home Alone had been lost forever. After years of being branded a fallen star, Macaulay Culkin began quietly rebuilding his life in the 2010s. The chaos of his 20s, arrests, tabloid scrutiny, and the stigma of addiction had left him burned out. But rather than chase Hollywood redemption, Culkin chose a different path, one defined by eccentricity, independence, and a refusal to be defined solely by Home Alone. In 2010, he co-founded a satirical comedy band called the Pizza Underground, which parodied classic Velvet Underground songs by replacing the lyrics with references to pizza. Though more performance art than serious music, the project toured small venues and gained cult notoriety online. For Culkin, it was less about career revival and more about reclaiming joy on his own terms. Critics mocked it, but fans who attended shows often described a relaxed, funny Macaulay who seemed at ease performing without the crushing expectations of Hollywood. Culkin also re-emerged sporadically in acting and media. He made cameo appearances in quirky indie projects, lent his voice to animated shows, and even parodied his own fame, such as a 2018 viral web short where he reprised Kevin McAllister as an adult still haunted by his childhood ordeal. These appearances reminded audiences of his sharp comedic instincts while showcasing his willingness to poke fun at his past. In interviews, Culkin began to speak more candidly about his struggles. He admitted to experimenting with drugs but pushed back against exaggerated rumors of heroin addiction or complete collapse. He described himself instead as someone who had lived a strange, outsized life and was learning to navigate adulthood at his own pace. His honesty, paired with a sense of humor about his own image, gradually shifted public perception from pity to empathy. Another stabilizing factor was his relationship with actress Brenda Song, which began in 2017. The couple welcomed a son, Dakota, in 2021, named in honor of Macaulay's late sister. Fatherhood, he has said, gave him a renewed sense of purpose and joy. For fans who once feared he wouldn't survive his 20s, the sight of Culkin as a doting parent was nothing short of redemptive. By the late 2010s, Culkin leaned into his cult status. He launched a comedic lifestyle website, Bunny Ears, parodying celebrity wellness brands. In 2020, He delighted fans by guest starring in American Horror Story, double feature, marking his most mainstream acting role in years. His performance earned praise, with critics noting that beneath the tabloid myth was still a capable and charismatic actor. Culkin's comeback was never about reclaiming the A-list. It was about redefining success on his own terms. He avoided blockbuster expectations and instead embraced smaller, weirder, and more personal projects. In doing so, he transformed from a cautionary tale into something rarer, a survivor of child stardom who, after scandal and retreat, found stability and humor in a quieter, self-directed life. For audiences, watching Culkin re-emerge not as a tragic figure but as a healthy, self-aware adult was a form of closure. The boy from Home Alone had grown up, not perfectly, not smoothly, but authentically. Today, Macaulay Culkin lives far from the tabloid caricature that once defined him. At 43, he is no longer the gaunt, troubled figure splashed across supermarket magazines in the 2000s. Instead, he has carved out a quieter, more balanced life, one that embraces both his oddball humor and his role as a partner and father. With Brenda Song, Culkin has built a family, raising their 2 young children in Los Angeles. He speaks often about finding joy in fatherhood, a role that seems to have grounded him in ways fame never could. For someone who spent his own childhood as Hollywood's most famous kid, giving his children a normal upbringing has become one of his central goals. Publicly, Culkin has leaned into his cult status. His website Bunny Ears continues to parody celebrity culture, a wink to the absurdity of the industry that once consumed him. His appearance in American Horror Story, double feature, 2020, reminded audiences of his enduring talent, sparking speculation about whether he might take on more acting roles in the future. Still, he chooses projects sparingly, wary of returning to the intense spotlight that defined his youth. The legacy of Home Alone remains inescapable. Every holiday season, Kevin McAllister returns to screens worldwide, a reminder of Culkin's unmatched charm as a child actor. Yet instead of resenting it, Macaulay seems to have made peace with the role, occasionally joking about it in interviews or viral sketches. It's not a burden now, but a chapter, one that will always define part of his story, even as he continues to write new ones. How history remembers Macaulay Culkin is still open-ended. For some, he'll always be the mischievous boy defending his home at Christmas. For others, he's a symbol of the dark side of child stardom, exploitation, family conflict, and addiction. But for many today, he represents survival, the rare star who stumbled, disappeared, and somehow found his way back to himself. Macaulay Culkin's story has no neat Hollywood ending. And maybe that's the point. His real victory isn't in box office numbers anymore, it's in simply living, laughing, and raising a family beyond the shadow of fame.